priorities. Our next speaker is Rob Coombs from Interface, the President and CEO of Interface Asia Pacific. And Interface is a well-known company in terms of their journey and how they've actually gone along towards trying to become a sustainable company, which is the ultimate, a sustainable company, which is their ultimate company vision. And Rob's going to give us effectively some of the ideas from a corporate point of view, and then is going to talk about some of how they've done things on a local level. So, Rob, over to you.
Thank you.
Should we just get you set up here? Set it.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. That's the introduction. I guess my brief this morning is to try to present the case from Interface's point of view, focusing on our vision and our outcomes so far in terms of trying to create for ourselves a sustainable organisation. And I guess the big challenge on day 3 of the Coombs is sort of finding something new to say, and that's even more challenging when your company also took part in the opening keynote speech by Ray Anderson, as some of us saw on Monday. It's kind of hard to beat Ray in terms of the impact that he has as a speaker. Can I just ask for a show of hands as to those of you that saw Ray's presentation? Oh dear, that's going to be tricky. So what I'll try and do is cover off some of the stuff that Ray spoke about and try and add a bit of local flavour as well, and use some local examples of some of the things that we've done, and hopefully illustrate that this is not just a one-man band. If this thing was only about Ray, it certainly wouldn't have worked and wouldn't be where we are today. So I'm hoping that through this you can see that that is the case. And I think what I need to do is to try and set the context. It's always difficult to talk about sustainability without looking at the context, so that's where I start. And then I'll aim to run through briefly what our plan and our strategy's been over the last 11 years. I'll look at some of those examples that we can show in terms of local achievement and local development. And then in closing, I'll look at some of the results, both in terms of sustainability and in terms of the business itself in more traditional terms. And I'll try to include in that some of the ways in which we have tripped up and screwed up along the way, because we certainly have enough of that to talk about as well over an 11-year period. So I guess, again, to start off by setting the context, it's important to set the scene, and there's a line that we've used for a long time in our organisation, which is that the truth will set you free, but first it can make you miserable. And I'm going to start off by trying to make you just a little bit miserable, because as many of us know, many of the reasons why we're here talking about sustainability can be quite depressing. It's not really a good news story. You all know most of the arguments, but just to set the context, I want to focus on one dimension of the problem, and in many ways it's the big picture, the extent to which the Earth can sustain the way we live. And we focus a lot at Interface on the notion of carrying capacity. And the world, of course, is not shrinking, but it's not getting any bigger either. This is all there is, and there'll never be any more of it. The problem, of course, is that we're consuming too much of it. And here's a look at what we take from the Earth to sustain the way that we currently live in different parts of the world. And you can see that the average land required to sustain the current lifestyles of us all, on average, on a global basis is around 2.2 hectares per person. That's the ecological footprint that we currently have as a global average to sustain our current lifestyle. But of course, that footprint varies from country to country, and you can see there the comparison of the degree to which the USA draws on the earth, a comparison with, say, Thailand or currently China as it sat in 1995. That number, I'm sure, will be a lot higher now if that was measured today, 10 years on. And you can see also that as time goes on, as we continue to draw from the earth and as we continue to consume more of it and as we degrade the natural environment, that by 2050 the bioproductive area that will be available to us on average will be roughly half of what we currently consume. That's a problem. And it gets even more interesting when you probe within countries. Is there anybody here who lives in Mosman himself? Oh, we found that. Lovely, thank you. Well, I live in Coombs, just up the road, a place with a very similar lifestyle to the average Mosmanite. Mosmanites being, of course, wonderful people. But if we can just sort of picture in our mind the life of the average Mosmanite, I guess you're talking about, not you, I'm sure, but the average Mosmanite has 3 or 4 vehicles perhaps. They are taking the kids to school in the morning in their 4-wheel drive. They're going on holidays every year. They have a large house on only a small block of land. You understand the picture. Not unlike where I live, I have to say. The Sydney Morning Herald, for those of you that saw it a couple of months ago, reported that the local council had measured the lifestyle patterns of the average Mosmanite and found that if the whole world lived the way that the average Mosmanite does, it would need about 8 planets to sustain us. And that Mosmanites require 15 hectares per person to support each of its residents, 50% higher than the average in Australia, and of course a long way from the 1.1 that we're going to have access to in 2050. And this is not saying, of course, that the Mosman people are bad people. The point is that if we continue as we are, we're headed for a crunch. And if developing countries emulate our way of living, of course it will get worse. And if they don't, can the level of disparity that we now see be sustained without other consequences? And as I'm sure we all know, it's about this triple bottom line concept. How do you achieve progress in all these 3 areas without compromise? How do you pay Paul without robbing Peter? And, as we've heard over the last few days, and as you're all very much aware, of course, business and the business system that we have at the moment and have had for many years now is really the fundamental problem. And Interface, coming back to our own organisation, really has a heritage that goes back to the source of the problem. It goes back 300 years. We are part of the textile industry. And the textile industry emerged at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in northern England in the early 1700s. That's the origin of Interface as a company in many ways. And of course, since 1712 or so, things have changed. We have 10 times the number of people. Living standards have, of course, risen dramatically, but only for about a third of us. And natural resources are depleting, and resource scarcity and carrying capacity are the issues of our time. But business and industry continues to this day to operate as if it was in 1700. As though people were still in short supply, and as if our natural resources were abundant. And as you heard from Ray the other day, we first had our eyes opened through him, through a book that he read in 1994, The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken, realising that in the first 25 years of our company, we've been operating on the principles of a 1700 oriented organisation. So as with any form of compulsive bad behaviour, the first step is that you need to recognise that you have a problem, and to recognise that we have a large footprint around the globe, and that as a petrochemical dependent company we are a big part of the problem. We are one of the Earth's plunderers, to use a term that Ray often uses. We're in the carpet business. We're in the business of making carpets and furniture fabrics, and we're the world's largest manufacturer of both of those items for commercial applications. We are a listed American company, and we heard Cameron saying before that quite often when you are a market-oriented organisation, it is quite difficult to operate in a way that's anything other than 100% bottom line focused. We operate globally with a factory in terms of the Asia Pacific region just south of Sydney and one just south of Bangkok that supplies the Asian market. 10 years ago we decided to create a new set of operating principles more in harmony with our natural environment, and we began to climb the mountain, this peak that we call Mount Sustainability, and we would say for sure that we're a long way from the top of the mountain, but certainly a long way from base camp as well. And we started off with a vision. We started off with a vision that in many ways is arrogant as you read it now, but one meant on leading by example, leading by doing, rather than leading by rhetoric, to use Cameron's term. And we've been extremely cautious over time, as have to litter obviously, in making sure that the ground is solid underneath before we make any form of claim of progress in this area. So we decided that we wanted to become the first company that in all forms of sustainability could show some leadership, and we aimed to do that by the year 2020, and in the process of that influencing others to the degree to which we can start to become restorative, putting back in more than we take out. And from there we evolved a 7-step strategy, and you've heard that from Ray, so I'll skip through this reasonably quickly, but I'll touch on 1 or 2 points just to emphasise some of the things we heard from Ray that I think might be of interest. The underpinning of it all financially is a drive on waste, which isn't just about scrap, isn't just about manufacturing waste. We define waste as everything we do that the customer would not readily pay for. So a misdirected delivery is waste, an incorrect invoice is waste, an inventory write-down is waste. Everything that is part of the value of a product, part of the value of a square metre of carpet or furniture fabric that the customer wouldn't pay for is waste. We have a second platform around emissions, trying to prevent toxic substances not just from the products but from the factories, from the vehicles we use, to go from A to B, emitting into the atmosphere. We have a third platform, a third step towards sustainability around energy sources, moving from what was a 100% fossil fuel-based energy source to renewable energy sources. And one that I'll dwell on a little bit is the endeavour towards trying to create a completely closed-loop production process, trying to redesign processes so that the products at the end of their life become the raw materials for the next generation product. Like, of course, in nature, as we've seen, where waste equals food, where everything is cyclical. And we use this stair-step approach, and as you climb up those stairs, it gets better and better. So you start off just by doing something. Little steps, do something. Use less. Dematerialize. Then we move on to what we call zippered products, because when you're making products from a number of different compounds that are then fused together in some way, the key step to recycling is to be able to in fact separate them. So we have tried as step 2 to engineer the products so that they come together in a way that can be easily separated. Now, try saying that to an engineer who spent most of the last 25 years trying to hold the damn things together. You know, it really is a flip of the approach. The step 3 for us is to try to make products that all come from the same compound, all come from the same material, so that the surface of the carpet is from the same material as the backing of the carpet and all the other components within it. Because if you can do that, that makes recycling that much easier. And then finally, to do that from materials that are completely renewable and compostable. So those are the steps along the way, and we have a range of examples, some of which I will come back to illustrate how we've evolved. And just to make one more point on that, one of our golden rules is to never introduce a bad product under the name of sustainability. That's the easiest way to fail. We see many organisations out there doing that, and it's a way to go broke, which is no help to anybody, let alone the customer. Our 5th front, and one in which I guess we have less influence over than some of the others, and one which is darn hard work, is to try to improve the way that we move around, both in terms of products and in terms of people, trying to create a much more efficient mode of transport within the company and all that we touch. The one that you heard Ray say underpins everything is what he referred to as our sensitivity hookup. It's about engaging our world. It's about engaging, first of all, our own people. It's about trying then to reach out to our suppliers, to our customers, and to the wider community, to promote a safe, sustainable future, to offer examples, to elicit help along the way. Without that, of course, nothing else works. And then finally, our 7th and ultimate goal is to try to create a different form of business, to try to model a different way of doing business. And you heard Ray talk about a movement away from a focus on making stuff to a focus on trying to market and sell the benefits of a product, trying to sell the outcome, trying to sell the acoustical comfort, aesthetic benefits, in our case of a piece of carpet, as opposed to the lump of stuff that you get in the door when you place your order. And for Interface to retain ownership of the stuff throughout its life on the floor of a customer, and then to take it back at the end of the process, in our case, and do something with it that puts it back within the loop. That's our ultimate objective. So, that's our plan, that's our map, as it were, and we believe that these operating principles are in tune with the way that we need to do business now, and the way that all business needs to do business now. And we've seen some good results so far. This is the impact that we've had within our local operations here. We've made some terrific progress in some areas here. We have lagged behind the rest of the company in other areas, and when you have an organisation that spans the globe, you'll have progress in different degrees, in different areas, at different levels, where you do some things better than others. But here's the story so far in terms of Australia. We've made some terrific progress, and at the same time we've been able to create for ourselves a business that is the fastest growing and the most profitable in the Interface world. So I guess on a local basis we would say that decent business results can go hand in hand with the wider success that we would define here. But as I say, we're only about 1/3 of the way up. Just wanted to illustrate some of the things that we've done locally to walk the talk. We have, for example, introduced the country's first post-consumer recycled carpet program. We call it Glassback Re. So we can in fact collect post-consumer old carpet at the end of its life. We can take it back, we strip away the backing, we then recycle the backing, back into new carpet tile backing. So we've kept it completely within the loop. The yarn is shaved off, and at the moment is disposed of in a way that doesn't enter landfill. We don't as yet have a totally closed loop solution for the yarn, so we're part of the way there. Having that in place ensures that we have an extremely high recycling content within the material by weight, and it also means that we can offer an end-of-life story to the customer. So when we install a product from interface or an improved competitor even, we can guarantee to in fact take it back at the end of its life. We've got the system set up to do so, and again put it back into the next generation product. And one of the really compelling competitive stories there that certainly works a treat is that you can recycle competitor product and they can't recycle their own. And that's a really powerful story sitting in front of the customer. The next idea isn't a product as such, more of a concept. I think you heard Ray also mention this term. Something we call cool carpet, which is an American term, which kind of works here sometimes. And it's geared towards climate change. As we all know, that's currently perceived as being one of the most acute problems that we're trying to deal with. And it's a way for people to purchase carpet without contributing to climate change. It's climate neutral carpet. And it's an offset program at the moment. And what we do is to calculate the total CO2 emissions involved in the sourcing of raw materials of the product through the transport of those to a factory, the conversion into carpet, the delivery to the customer, the installation, and the maintenance of the carpet throughout its life, and then the reclamation at the end of its life back into the loop. So we understand the complete life cycle impact of every single product that we make in those terms, and we offset all those CO2 emissions, offering the customer, again, a piece of carpet that will not contribute to climate change. The last idea, I think, is probably the best demonstration of what we want to be as a business, and it gets back to this concept of biomimicry, trying to use nature as a guide, trying to design products and processes the way that nature would design them. Nature, of course, is the most, probably the only sustainable system. It's the best manager that there is. And you heard Ray tell the story. I'm going to tell it again in more specific terms. We have a head of design who is based in a studio in the woods just outside of Atlanta. His name's David Oakey, and he held a meeting a couple of years ago, no, actually about 5 years ago now, with his design team, and asked him to go out into the forest around the studio and to look at the way that nature appeared to work and to think about how that might apply to the way that we design carpet. The team saw that in the forest no two elements were alike. No two trees, no two rock formations, no two leaves were alike. And somebody came back the next day and talked about how the leaves had fallen on the forest floor, and they made 3 observations. Firstly, no two leaves were the same. Secondly, they had fallen in a completely random fashion on the forest floor. And thirdly, in this sort of chaotic fashion, it looked fantastic. It looked beautiful in terms of the end result. So someone said, well, what if we were to design carpet tiles using the same principle, so that no two tiles were the same, and with the ability to lay them completely randomly? That doesn't sound all that special, doesn't sound all that sort of revolutionary, but up until that moment, everybody in our company and every other company that we compete with had been designing in the way that business has always designed since that first point 300 years ago, which was to make everything the same. The aim being to design in uniformity so that there is no variation, and where perfection is defined as zero variance. And of course we found that when you design on the basis that variation is a good thing, nature's principle, you get some amazing results. And if you heard from Ray, in this case we found that quality went down dramatically because the imperfections were actually designed in. The variation was designed in. And the flaws couldn't be seen as a result of that. Scrap waste was reduced as a result. Installation speed and costs were increased because no one had to worry about which direction the tile had to be laid in. Just throw them out of the box, throw them on the floor, it looks great. Dye-like variation, which is a huge issue in large commercial carpet installations, became a thing of the past, which meant less waste and faster service for the customer. So by using this lesson, by using the lessons from nature, our customers were offered a lower cost product, made much more efficiently, that could be serviced faster, installed more easily, and look wonderful. And lo and behold, as you heard from Ray, in 18 months it became our fastest selling product. And we now have over 30 products that are designed using the same principles. And with nature, of course, we thought of it first. So, we've found that our journey up Mount Sustainability has done wonders for our company. And by any traditional business measure, it works. I feel more than comfortable standing up in front of any group of hard-nosed CEOs and talking about traditional business measures and the impact that this approach has had on the company. And I guess we've heard other speakers say the same thing, but the number one for me is about people. We work in the carpet industry, and it might surprise you to understand that the carpet industry is not the sexiest industry in the world. And in the past, that's meant that we've had a little difficulty trying to recruit fantastic people into the business and to hold them. But when you communicate the story, when you communicate the interface philosophy, it's just amazing in the sense that I've never seen anybody not want to join the business when they understand what we do during the interview process. So we have embraced a whole lot of fantastic people in the company over time, and we of course keep them as a result of our commitment. But it's certainly not all roses, and after 11 years we can, I think, comfortably be very open about the ways in which we've screwed up and things that haven't worked. We've made many mistakes along the way, and we've met many technological dead ends, because there are really few black and white solutions in many of these areas at the moment. Many of our key products and process challenges around sustainability need to be pioneered. An example of that is that we spent a lot of time trying to move away from petrochemical-based raw materials, and we've had a lot of success developing a product made from corn-based material, substituting from oil-based nylon, which is a wonderful concept. It means that you're taking less oil out of the ground. The level of CO2 emissions along the way goes down dramatically. It's completely compostable at the end of its life, so there's no afterlife problem. And I can recall being involved in this in the launch in Europe, and we came screaming up to launch day, highly enthusiastic, wanting to really make a loud noise of this, and then our supplier of the corn fibre, a very large, well-known organisation, popped up and said, well, of course we can't guarantee that the corn is 100% non-GM corn. It's not. We can't guarantee that it's not completely non-genetically modified. Well, what does that mean how do you reconcile all of the benefits that you think you've got here sitting in your hand versus the fact that certainly in Europe, GM is the number one target for many of the very aggressive groups that are working around sustainability, and for some very good reasons. So how do you sort of balance up those two? And we continue to struggle. We engage with the likes of Greenpeace, Worldwide Fund for Nature and other organisations to try and find a way through. And in that case, we determined that through the power of our purchasing, we could start to influence ultimately the farmers of the corn to move to organic processes, and we committed to offset all that we sourced along those lines, and that seemed to present a reasonable solution to the problem. But it's extremely easy in this area, we found, to take a wrong turn if you're not careful. And something that frustrates me a lot is that if you start to create a name within this area, everybody assumes all of a sudden that you're going to get wonderful, continuous, consistent business results. And there are people around that spend lots of time trying to map and trying to match a company's progress in sustainability with their bottom line progress. And I'm here to tell you that being involved in sustainability, being really committed to it, does not overnight turn you into a business genius. You still make dumb decisions, you still make bad acquisitions, and all of the things that present risk within a business don't go away. And over time we've made bad decisions, we've made bad acquisitions, and we've had bad years. And been fairly heavily criticised for that and saying, well, you know, you're so bright, you're so smart, how come you're doing all this stuff and you had a bad year? Well, you know, it doesn't work out that way. All we know is that 11 years on, we are unquestionably a much better organisation. And if we weren't focused on this area, if we truly did not believe that this is a much better way to make a buck, that our good years would not have been as good and our bad years would have been worse. We know that for sure. And I guess the good news is that we are just a small part of a large and growing movement. If you look at the number of organisations and people around the world that are involved in environmental and social equity activity, you'd see that it's the largest movement that the world has ever seen. And I think Ray made the point, and would say that it's bigger than the Catholic Church, it's bigger than Islam, it's bigger than communism ever was. And you can't see it in the way that you can see some of those movements, because it is essentially non-political. It has no charismatic supreme leader. There's no pope, I guess, of the sustainability movement. But instead it operates like nature. It operates organically. It seeks the path of least resistance. As we heard from Ray, there are hundreds of thousands of organisations employing millions of people who are involved. And there are people in Mossman as well who are equally as involved and committed. So whilst we continue to have good years and bad years, there's no doubt that in our minds, as more businesses operate in harmony with the world around them, that all companies will do better, and we call it simply doing well by doing good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. I'm sure there will be some questions from the audience. Anybody want to start off? Okay. Maybe I'll ask the first question. One thing I was quite a bit unclear on is in terms of the cost competitiveness of your products. You said that the I2 products were relatively affordable. Now, is that relative to your own products, or is that relative to other products on the market? And have you found that you've been able to sort of do all all of the good steps that you've been doing and still remaining competitive, or are people paying a premium on it?
People won't pay more
Okay.
for something which is a more environmentally sustainable option. That's our experience. So innovation happens, I think, within very tightly defined boundaries. If you have a very tightly defined target area, if you know people aren't going to pay more for it, if you know that you need to meet traditional performance standards, and if you know that you need to make a buck along the way, that really helps to define the innovation process and helps to guide it.
Okay.
And if you didn't have those boundaries, I think you would become lazy. So it's tough, it isn't easy, but we have found through the setting of those sorts of boundaries that we've been able to create the ideas and implement the skills necessary to meet those challenges. So those I2 products, as we define them, are certainly cost effective in relation to most of the range that we offer, and in relation to most of the competition as well. So it makes the customer decision that much easier.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yes.
My name is Nicole Patterson. I work for a water authority in Victoria. And one of the things that I work with industry quite highly in terms of encouraging them to reduce their water consumption. And one of the issues that they always raise is, if we change our current processes, how is that going to impact on the quality of the product we're going to be putting out? Did you find that looking at alternative products and looking at more sustainable inputs into your product, that there was a difference in the quality of product that you were putting out? Or, I mean, obviously you've got quality standards you need to meet, but was it difficult getting to that kind of quality standard level?
Yes, it was. And again, one of the golden rules that we implemented from the start was never to introduce a bad product in the name of sustainability. So that again helps to define the boundaries for innovation, helps to define the area that you need to be in. And if you can get that right, of course, it makes you extremely competitive. So we found that by using the lessons from nature in our design process, by being really focused on waste, and by looking at the process on a life cycle basis from start to finish, that you can get the end result that includes cost effectiveness and value for money. Said, people aren't going to pay more for this stuff. People expect certain standards, as do we, and it just makes you have to work that much harder. But when you get there, you have such a competitive edge that it's worth it.
I was just wondering, you talked about some of your suppliers, and I was just wondering whether others, whether you have tended to move away from previous suppliers, or whether they have actually changed some of their practices to fit in with your philosophy.
Yes, we have. The most important thing we source is yarn for the carpet face, and there are around the world probably 6 to 7 major suppliers of the yarn, and there are some very large companies in there, companies like BASF, DuPont and others. And we said to many of these companies years ago that if you wanted to increase your slice of the interface business, you had to help us with the journey, and we will move our business to you if you do, and if you don't, we'll be obviously moving away to those that do. So as we speak, probably 60% of our current yarn supply is from a company that we weren't doing business with 7 or 8 years ago. That's the only one that's been able to offer us a continued stream of very high quality recycled yarn. And the companies that have not got it have lost our business.
And were they doing that prior to you sort of taking on this new approach, or did they see that sort of market gap and jump into it?
I think there was a fair amount of influence from Interface on the decision. I mean, the wonderful thing about your upstream supply chain is that you've got the power over it. You can say yes or no, I won't buy from you, or I will buy from you. And as the world's largest commercial carpet company, we have a certain purchasing power. We've had more difficulty downstream trying to use this stuff, trying to communicate this stuff to the customer has been a really difficult thing. The supply chain thing isn't easy because there are a whole range of technical challenges, but the process is easy. Downstream, trying to talk about it to the customer in a way that makes sense, that doesn't need a 30-minute slide presentation, trying to distill all of this down to a 5-minute elevator conversation is extremely difficult. That's been a much bigger challenge, and we haven't yet got that one right.
I just wanted to add to that little comment. Bar and Water, who I work for in Geelong, Victoria, we opened up a display home, and people often say, so what on earth is a water authority doing building a display home? And what we were trying to do was demonstrate kind of best practice in new home design, and one of the things that we incorporated in that was looking at suppliers such as yourself who have these types of environmental practices in place and promoting that to the customer so that when they come in, they know what companies or organisations have sustainable practices in place so they have the ability to make better product choices. And we did that in a way of putting signage around the home so that when people walk around they say, oh, I know who supplied that and this is the benefit of that particular product. And that's one thing we've found very beneficial and something we're trying to encourage other home builders within our region to really take up and work with their suppliers a lot better.
Great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question. The very existence of your company must be shows deficiencies in your competitors, and are they threatened by that? And do they take an approach to disparage your company in any way in order to keep competitive in the marketplace?
Yes, they do. They started off by saying that Interface's chairman has gone mad. Why would you buy any shares in a company like that, led by a guy like that? That was 10 years ago. And then they started to see that there was some success being made in terms of the business results, and they were seeing from their own customers that they were being asked for these sorts of solutions. So they got on board, and one of the things that I'm pretty comfortable that we led is a shift in terms of in terms of the industry competitive framework, and that there's not a single day goes by now when sustainability and the issues around it don't play an important part in some major projects that we're all competing for. So that has led other organisations that we compete with to try and emulate what we're doing and to do their own thing. And there are many companies doing some really good things, which is great. So the competitive framework's certainly changed. Carpet has always been a fairly commoditised product, but now there's a lot more to choose between. You have companies that are offering different types of environmental solutions, and that's good. So I think it's really helped. So they started off disparaging, they've then started to emulate, and now we compete head to head, which is great.
So that's one question.
Okay.
And if the inverse of that is, say for instance, wool-based carpets, environmental impacts, especially in Australia, with the foods and soil erosion. Do you use that as a marketing tool in a way of attacking other companies? Or?
We don't try to disparage any other organisation. That's not in our makeup. But one of the things that constantly frustrates us is that people assume that anything that comes from the sheep's back must be a more sustainable solution. And in terms of the way in which that's then converted into carpet, it's not. Trying to break that down in a country like Australia is tough. So that's more frustrating than the competitive threat that we get from other nylon-based manufacturers.
Right, I think we'll have to move on there, so thank you very much, Rob, for an interesting